We're now in Daf Zayin Amid Beis, trying to figure out why the donkey of Pinchas ben Yair, when they got to the inn and the innkeeper was feeding the donkey barley, the donkey refused to eat. Chavtinu. They thought maybe, this barley has to be sifted. You got to make it into like very fine barley. Lo achel, didn't help. Nakrinu. Milashon lenakot. Now they cleaned out. Perhaps there was some, chaff or some sort of pebbles that were inside the barley, and that's why he refused to eat. Lo achel, garnish gehelf. Amalahu. But Pinchas ben Yair says, Dilvalo ma'asra. Maybe you never took maser from these barley kernels. And my donkey is not going to allow me to fall prey to feeding my donkey grains that need maser, and their tevel, they were never subject to afrosha. And asrinu, they went ahead and they were mafresh maser. Apparently they were amaratzim, and we said yesterday that many amaratzim failed to be mafresh trumas and masros. V'yochal. Now the donkey was able to eat it. Omar. But Pinchas ben Yair made the following declaration. Aniya zu. The word aniya literally means a poor woman. I mean, poor in the feminine, but when you talk about a female donkey, you use the word aniya. This poor creature. Holechas lasos rutzon kona. She's trying to help me out, right? I'm riding the donkey to get to Pidyon Shvuyim, and machilin also tvolin, and you're feeding this holy donkey tvolim tevel. Anyway, we see clearly that HaKadosh Baruch Hu set it up in such a way that the animal would refuse to eat without hafrashas trumas and masros in order to avoid a takola, a pitfall, that the tzaddik shouldn't fall into that pitfall. Frekti Gemara, who cares if the donkey eats, dmai, not without hafrasha? If let's say you go to an Amaretz and you buy grains from him, but you want to just feed it to your animal, it's animal fodder, or kemach li oros, you're not interested in eating the kemach, you need it for tanning purposes. Shemen, but you're not interested in using it as a salad dressing, but rather lener. Shemen losuf, or alternatively, he's taking from the Amaretz shemen for the purpose of greasing his machinery. Potamidmai. There's no requirement of afrasha in such a case. Included in this list, and first on the list, is lebehema. So that even if Pinchas ben Yair is acquiring this barley for the purpose of feeding his animal, he's not chayav in Dmai. So Gemara answers, Hasam ha'itmar, we have a mission in Dmai that says, you're right. If when the Amei Haaretz in that inn offered the barley was only from the get-go for the purpose of feeding the animal, then you're right. There's no chiyuv of demai here. And Pinchas ben Yair didn't have to, and his donkey didn't have to avoid eating the demai. But, says Rabbi Yochanan, I'm going to prove to you from a brisa that if initially you purchase an entire volume of grains from an Amaretz, which is Dmai, and then you decide, I have a great volume of grains, let me share some of them with my animal, with my donkey. In such a case, you're chayav in afrosha. I don't know exactly what the lumdus is here, but I think what's going on, according to Rabbi Yochanan, is that since initially he purchased from the Amaretz grains that were Dmai for the purpose of his achilas Adam, that already clinches the chi of Dmai, and you can't be mafkia that by deciding, well, I'm going to rechannel this Dmai, and I'm going to use it to feed my behemoths. You can't wake up one day and say, Dmai, poof, all of a sudden it becomes mutter, it's ois Dmai, because I'm going to feed it to my animal. And here's the brisa, lokech peros min hashuk lachila. So initially, his intention was for human consumption. V'nimlach alem. Then he decides, oh, you know what? I'm going to feed my animal. Hareza lo yitain lo lifnei behemto lo lifnei behemes chavero. He's not allowed to use it and enjoy it and feed it to his animal or even his friend's animal before he takes off mas. And therefore, the barley that was given to Pinchas ben Yor originally was purchased for the purpose of human consumption, and therefore the Chiv Tevel and Afrashis Tamai set in and was generated as a Chiv, and even though he decided to rechannel, redirect it, and he changed his mind for the purpose of consumption of the animal, it still remains Tamai. Shomar Rebbe finds out that you know who's in town? Pinchas ben Yair is in town. He's on his way through our locale. Nafakapi goes out to greet him, Amalei, and he turns to Pinchas ben Yair. He says, Ritzoncha Sa'od Etzli, would you please honor me by being my guest and dining in my house? And this would be great for Rebbe because Rebbe knows that Pinchas ben Yair doesn't eat in anybody's house. He doesn't rely on even on badats, it's nothing. And to Rebbe's great satisfaction, Pinchas ben Yair agreed to eat in his house. That's like a feather in Rebbe's cap. Here's a great Tana, holy pious, famous guy who never eats anywhere. Savu Panav Shel Rebbe is excited about this. His face is radiant with joy. Amalo. And when Pinchas ben Yair says, Kimiduma Atah, Shemuder Hanom Yisrael Ani. Don't think for one moment that I took a neder that prohibits me from getting any benefit from any Jew. Yisrael Kedoshim him. The Jewish people are holy, and they're all worthy of my benefiting from them. But you know what? It depends on the circumstances. Yesh rotza ve'enlo. You have people who really want to invite me over or invite guests over, but they just don't have the wherewithal. They don't have the funds to do so. V'yesh sheyesh lo ve'enerotza. There are others who really have the money, but they're not interested. They're stingy. They're what you call, they have an iron heart. They don't want to share their wealth with others. Uksiv. Now, it could be that these others, the second category, people who never, like to share with you, but maybe they're embarrassed, so they might invite you, but begrudgingly. And the pasuk says, which I believe is in Mishleya, Al tilachem es lechem ra'ayin. If he's got a tzoras ayin, you know what? Don't eat his bread. Al tisov l'matov. Don't desire his delicacies. If you know that this person really has an ayin hara, he doesn't want to share it with you, even if he invites you, don't take advantage of it. Ki kimo sha'ar b'nafsho kenhu. His soul is embittered. And he's not gratified by the fact that you're eating his food. He's watching you and thinking, oh, how much did it cost me? Right, this cup of wine that he drank cost me 100 shekel, and this piece of meat cost me 300 shekel. Even though he says to you, eat and drink, but you know what? His heart is not there with you. And therefore I decline any invitation. But you, Rebbe, you fit into a third category. Rotze, you really, really want to, and you'll feel joy and gratification if I eat with you. And Yeshlo, Rebbe was one of the wealthiest people in his time. But nevertheless, says Pinchas ben Yair, don't count your chickens before they hatch. Hashta misharvina, I have to decline. Because the mitzvah katarachna, I am busy and preoccupied. I got an urgency. I got to get as quick as I can to the poda a shevi. But Yadrana, on my way back, asina alayna legabach. I'll come and I'll eat in your house. Ki asa, on his way back, Isrami, it happened to be that al bahu pischa da havi kaima be when he came into Rebbe's entranceway, what does he see? Kudnaisa Ivasa. The mules of Rebbe, very expensive mules, were white mules. And they were standing there at the entrance. Pinchas Ben Yair says, I gotta I gotta get out of here as soon as possible. White mules are very dangerous. Omar, and he declares, Malach HaMoves bebeso shel zeh. There's an angel of death, a very dangerous mule, or a couple of mules, in this entranceway. Ani esod etzlo? I'm going to go in and eat by him? So now Rebbe hears about this, and he's very disappointed. He so much wants Pinchas Ben Yair to come in. He's got to calm him down. Maybe I could calm him down. Shomer Rebbe Nofek Lapi goes out to see him. Amal, he says, Mizavninalu, you know what? I'll sell the mules. Amal, Pinchas Ben Yair says, you're going to sell it to another Jew, and that Jew is going to take in a dangerous mule in his house. Lifnei Ivelo Sitei Michshal. You're not letting endanger somebody of the Jews. If Karina Lucha, you know what? I'll make it hefker. I won't sell it to any Jew. Where Pinchas Ben Yair says, you know what? Mafish hezeka. You know, you're increasing harm out there. You don't know where this wild white mule is going to attack somebody. A karnalahu. They're only harmful because they have hooves and they move at the speed of light and they bite. I'm going to cut off their hooves. You're causing pain to animals. These are helpless animals. Why would you do that? Katilnulhu, you know what? I'll put them out of their misery. Immediately shoot them. Ikabal tashkas. I mean, these white mules serve a function. They're worth, you're not allowed to just destroy them. Here I get a little stuck because, as far as I know, there's no baltashkas if there's a purpose to doing what you're doing. I mean, Rebbe obviously was not just killing these mules for the sake of fun. You know, I don't know about hunters, whether that's allowed according to halacha, but here there's no baltashkas. But again, the Gemara assumes there's baltashkas. He doesn't comment on it at all here. Anyway, Havakomatesh Beituva. So Rebbe tried over and over again to invite Gava Tura Benayu. Now HaKadosh Baruch Hu does a miracle in order to separate Rebbe from Pinchas Ben Yair so that Rebbe will not be able to seduce Pinchas Ben Yair to come and eat with him. And what happens? Gava Tura Benayu, a great mountain, rises up, separating the two. Rebbe can't see Pinchas Ben Yair. Bacha Rebbe Gmar. Now the word Bacha here, which literally means wept, I think has a different meaning. Wept means when you realize something awesome, something great, sometimes out of the emotional impact of learning about something that's so lofty, you start breaking down in tears. Ma b'chayem kach. If during the lifetime of a righteous people it's so, then b'misas and alachas kam v'kama. They can even have a greater shefa, a greater impact, even posthumously after they die. He says God honors the wishes of the righteous during their lifetime because Pinchas Ben Yair really didn't want to eat even by Rebbe. Imagine to what extent he honors their wishes after death. Rebbe understood that divine providence had caused Rav Pinchas Ben Yair to enter into the house by the entrance where the mules were standing in order to afford him the opportunity to decline Rebbe's invitation. For it was in fact Rav Pinchas Ben Yair's custom to refrain from benefiting from anyone under any circumstances, as we'll see later on. So therefore, providence ordained that Rav Pinchas Ben Yair's true desire not to benefit from anybody would be honored. Rebbe therefore marveled at the degree to which the wishes of the righteous persons, like Rav Pinchas Ben Yair, would be honored, not only in this world, but how much more so in the world to come after death. The impact here in this world of a tzaddik after his death is even greater than the impact he had in his lifetime. In Hasidus, this is very big, deep mystical concepts. Shenemar vayhi kovrim ish v'hinei ro es hagedud v'ashlichu es ha'ish bekever Elisha vayelech vayiga ha'ish be'atzmos Elisha vayechi vayokam al ragl. Imagine Elisha was able to be Mechaya Mesim twice, once during his lifetime, which is in terms of the Eishes Hashunamis, but that he had to work very hard, and another time after his death. And what happened was this man touches the bones of Elisha after Elisha died, and he was able to stand on his feet. He was in the cemetery. He was dead, but somehow I don't know. His body touched Elisha, and he returned to life. So we see that in Elisha's death, he was able to resurrect a man merely because that man came in contact with his bones, with Elisha's bones, and yet during his lifetime, Elisha was able to resurrect a person only through considerable effort, which is the Eishes Hashunamis. He first prayed. Right, remember she was childless, and then as a result of her achnosis orchim, the Tanakh tells Elisha, said, "What can I do for you?" She said, "B'toch hami anochi yoshavas," and so forth, until finally he blessed her that she should have a child, and then the child died. So first he prays, then he employs a complex procedure through which the child came to life slowly. But the person that was thrown, I guess his body was thrown into Elisha's cave, where Elisha was buried, he was resurrected instantaneously through mere contact with the remains of Elisha. We see that Elisha was greater in his death than his life. Fekta Gemara, that's not necessarily so. Amalei Rapopla Abai Vidilma, perhaps, L'kiyume Ber B'chased Elio. When Elio went up to Shamayim, he said to Elisha, "Do you have one last request from me?" And Elisha said, "Tainli pi shnai miruchacha, give me a double portion of your spirit." And Elio responded to Elisha, and he said, "Look, if you'll be able to see me go up Hashamayma, it means that you will be granted pi shnai. You'll get a double portion." T'chsiv v'hi no pi shnai miruchayla. Now, Elio had bestowed upon Elisha at the point of his death, again, I use the word death, but we don't know what to call it. It's not exactly death. A double bracha, double portion. So therefore, even though Elisha resurrected a child, and that was the ben of the Eishes Shunamis during his lifetime, he would have to do it a second time and resurrect the dead a second time because of the blessing of Elio. And now, fulfilling that, or the realization of that bracha after Elisha's death, indicates the impact of Elisha even after his death, which was greater than that during his lifetime when he had to work so hard. Amalei, Abai says to Rav Papa, Ihachi. So 1 minute. So I left out the punchline here. So what is Rav Papa arguing? He says you can't prove anything from the fact that Elisha was able to resurrect the dead even after his life. That doesn't prove a thing, because that was just a fulfillment of Elio's bracha. And that bracha was bestowed when Elio was still alive. So where do you see that the impact of a tzaddik is even greater after his death? Says Abaye to Rav Papa, forget about it. You have no challenge here. Ihachi hainu desanya. We were taught in a brisa al raglav amad. Right? This body, supposedly a dead body, touches Elisha's bones, and he stands up on his feet. And it says in the pasuk that he just walked a little bit, a short distance, and then boom, he dropped dead. He wasn't able to live long enough to get even home. He basically was resurrected, plopped dead on the spot, never made it home. Now the Gemara asks the following question by saying, if this was all the influence of of Eliyahu's blessing, and it wasn't the influence of Elisha, the tzaddik, then Why would he have to be resurrected just simply to die again? But the answer is that he was able to be resurrected so that he wouldn't be buried in the same cave, in the same, I think it's called in English a crypt, anyway, in the same cave as Elisha. So that he would be resurrected even after they threw him together into the dead, such he touched the bones of Elisha in the same cave, so that he would be able to walk a few steps, plots wherever he plots, and they would bury him there. So it's all because of the schus of Elisha and the impact of Elisha now to resurrect the dead so that this dead person would not be buried together with Elisha is so great that it's even greater than Elisha's ability to resurrect the dead during his lifetime. So now that you've said that the power and the ability to resurrect that second resurrection was because of Elisha, so what about Eliyahu's blessing that Elisha should get Pishnaim? How did that get fulfilled? Rabbi Yochanan Sharipat Saras Naaman. So there's a whole parsha in Tanakh about Elisha's ability to cure Naaman, who is the chief, military commander of our enemies, but for whatever reason, he told him to dip 7 times in the Yarden, and Naaman was cleared of his tsaras. So we see that here's a second resurrection because the tsaras, as the Gemara says, each kula kemes, shenemer al noah tehi kemes, with regard to Miriam. And now we see that this ability to resurrect the dead a second time, not literally the dead, but the tsaras, and cure him miraculously of his tsaras, that ability was the impact of the bracha of Eliyahu. Now, let's get back to the mules that were owned by Rebbe that are called angels of death. Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Lama Nikra Shmam Yomim, in the story of creation, these mules are called Yomim. It says, Hu Ana Asher Motzas Hayomim Bamidbar. No. That's not a creation. This has to do with Anna discovering the mules in the desert. Anna was the first one to crossbreed a donkey with a mare and produce a mule. And the name given to that mule was Yemim. Yemim. And Yemim comes, says the Gemara, from the language of Ema, of fear. Shemosim utelos alabrios. Right? This kind of a mule is so frightful. The Omer Rab Chanina miyame lo shalani odom. Right, Rab Chanina was a physician, and he said, no one ever asked me about the makkah of this prey de levana, of this white mule, and survived. So the Gemara says, we saw many people who were bitten by this white mule and they survived it. Ema v'chayos, meaning no one who was affected, who was inflicted by a blow from this mule and asked me for consultation what to do about it, no one was healed. Again, but we saw others that were healed. The chivon reish karei ka amrina. There are 2 types of white mules. The white mule that I'm talking about has white tips on his feet. Einod milvado, Amar Rab Chanina, filuk shofin. Now, since we mentioned Rab Chanina, let me tell you something else that Rab Chanina said. And he said that God will protect the great tzaddik against sorcery, against kshofin. And therefore, we can demonstrate it with the following story about Rab Chanina. So there was a certain machashefa, Davi Komahadra Lemishkal Afra, right? The Kishuv, I think we learned this in Masechta Shabbos, if they take the dust from under your feet, they can cause your death. Mituse carried Rabbi Chanina. Omar Allah. She was trying to get to get the dust under Reb Chanina's feet and kill him. And so he says, no, you know what? No sweat. Shkuli, go ahead, take it. Lo Messiah Milsa, you would not be successful in killing me. Why? Because Ein Od Milvadot, if God protects the tzaddikim. Frekti Gemara Rabbi Yochanan, Lama Nikra Shma Kshafim. What is the etymological meaning of the word Kshafim? Shemakchishim Pamal Yishomala. They have the power to even contradict and overcome the legions up in Shamayim. Shani Rab Chanina did nafish skuse. That's true for most people. Kshafim will be very dangerous and powerful, and they can contradict the upper legions, but not in the case of Rab Chanina because he had a special merit. He was afforded an unusual degree of heavenly protection. Be Amar Rab Chanina, another statement of Rab Chanina. Ein Adam no. This is a very, very famous Gemara. Very famous. Ein Adam no kefetz bo milamata. A person doesn't bang his toe down here on earth. Elam came achrizin ol milamal. Apparently, he was guilty of something, maybe of going in the, for something without the right kavanas, and he stubs his toe. This is all part of a divine decree up in heaven that he'll stub his toe. Now, if you don't wear shoes or socks, I don't know if you could blame it on the one above. I don't know. I only say that to you because I can't tolerate shoes and socks. But anyway, Shenemar ma mitzadei gover konenu v'odem bal yovin darko. Anyway, there are layers and layers of meaning here in this Gemara. We'll just mention one thing here as we pass. That the word konenu, which is in the pasuk that we just read in Mishlei, but also appears in Tehillim, and there it says in Kapitel Amid Zayin, it says Ma mitzadei gover v'odam bal yovin darko. Okay, so anyway, the Gemara, there's a textual problem here, but the Gemara is actually combining two different psukim. Amar Rabbi Loza, dam nikuf meratze kedam ola. When you stub your toe and it bleeds, that's like bringing a carbon ola. It's mechaper. Amar Rava, begudal yeminu benikuf sheni. This only applies if he stubbed his right toe, because when you move forward with your right leg, it's usually very quickly and with a lot of force. Ubenikuf sheni, and it happened a second time. And not only that, says Rava, mitzvah. He's on his way to do a dvar mitzvah. You would think Hashem should protect him, right? Shluchei mitzvah, but no, God is going to tell him you don't have the right kavanas. You're not doing it with pure intention. Amar lav Rav Pinchas ben Yair miyomav lo botza al prusa she'ena shalom. Umiyom shamer al daito lo nena. I'm going to add the word afilu misudas aviv. In other words, what does the pasuk say? Just give me a second. Sone matonas yichya, which means we extol those who don't want to live off others. They want independence. Everything comes from themselves. Pinchas ben Yair didn't even accept from his father. And therefore, Miyom Shamad al Dato, once he was mature, what he would do was to avoid taking gifts even from his father. And he was very extreme about this. He would slaughter animals, which we'll see about tomorrow. But just to finish for today, one who practices this avoidance of taking from others to the extreme of Pinchas ben Yair, he's not considered haughty or aristocratic, antisocial, but rather praiseworthy. And this we see from Pinchas ben Yair. Okay, then this is where we'll stop for today. And Emir Hashem, tomorrow is Thursday, correct? So we meet tomorrow.
Noon.